In the crowded tenements of early 20th century New York, hope was a currency as scarce as coin. For Eleanor Vance, a young widow with a 6-year-old son, the world had shrunk to the size of her small, gaslit room and the rhythmic, relentless plunge of her sewing needle. By day, she was a ghost in the city's garment industry, doing piecework for a pittance. By night, she was a mother, watching her son, Thomas, sleep in the corner, his gentle breaths a fragile counterpoint to the city's roar. Her life was measured in stitches. Each shirt she finished was another few pennies towards the rent. Each seam she sewed was a prayer for enough food to fill Thomas's small belly. Her fingers were a permanent tapestry of pinpricks and calluses, the testament to a life spent selling her waking hours for mere survival. She saved, of course, hoarding single cents in a chipped porcelain jar. But it was saving born of fear, a desperate bulwark against the constant threat of sickness or eviction. It was the savings of the poor, a fund for emergencies, never a fund for opportunities. One winter, a cough settled deep in Thomas's chest. The doctor's visit and the medicine devoured her meager savings in a single afternoon. As she held her sleeping son that night, a cold, terrifying clarity washed over her. She was not on a path, she was on a treadmill. And if she stumbled, her son would fall with her. The love she felt for him was a fierce, protective inferno, and it was in that fire that a new resolve was forged. Survival was no longer enough. She had to build a fortress. Her first attempt to climb the walls of her circumstance was a step into a gilded trap. A man in her building, a lender named Mr. Gable with a persuasive smile and a ledger full of names, saw her exhaustion. "Mrs. Vance," he said one evening, his voice dripping with false sympathy, "I see how hard you work. Your needle is fast, but it is only one needle. With a new, treadle-operated sewing machine, you could double your output, double your pay." He offered her a loan to purchase one. "A small weekly payment is all it takes. An investment in your future." An investment. The word sounded so promising. She saw a vision of herself producing twice the garments, her porcelain jar finally overflowing. She signed his ledger, her hand trembling with a mixture of fear and hope. The new machine was a marvel. It hummed and whirred, and her output did, in fact, increase. But the numbers didn't add up. Mr. Gable's small weekly payment was calculated with an interest rate so predatory that it consumed almost all her extra earnings. She was working faster, harder, her legs aching from the treadle. Yet she felt poorer than before. She was now shackled to the machine, its rhythmic hum a constant reminder of her debt. She hadn't bought a tool for her freedom, she had bought herself a more efficient cage. The failure was a bitter pill. She had tried to be smart, to invest, but had only dug herself a deeper hole. The shame was a constant companion. She had not only failed herself, but she had also endangered Thomas's future. Humbled and desperate, she began taking on mending work from the local shopkeepers to make the weekly payments. She mended the apron of the butcher, the tablecloths of the small diner, and the flour sacks of Mr. Schmidt, the stern German baker whose shop filled the street with the warm, comforting smell of fresh bread. Mr. Schmidt was a man of few words, but his eyes missed nothing. He saw the quality of Eleanor's stitches, the care she took even with a ripped flour sack. He saw the weary resolve in her face. One evening, as she returned his neatly mended sacks, he stopped her. "You have good hands, Frau," he said, his voice a low rumble, "but you have a poor head for business." Eleanor flinched, but he continued, not unkindly, "You and the men in my bakery, you think alike. You sell your time, you work an hour, you get paid for an hour. You work faster, you get paid a little more. You are a hamster in a wheel. The faster you run, the faster the wheel spins. The house always wins." He wiped his flour-dusted hands on his apron. "I do not sell my time. I sell bread. I take flour, water, yeast, worth pennies, and I use my skill and my ovens to turn them into a loaf that I sell for a profit. I sell a product, a system. You are selling your life. One stitch at a time. You need to get out of the wheel." The baker's words struck her with the force of a physical blow. "I sell my life, one stitch at a time." It was the truest thing anyone had ever said to her. Her deal with Mr. Gable, her endless piecework, it was all just spinning the wheel faster. She had to get out. But how? She wasn't a baker, she was a seamstress. That night, she didn't sleep. She sat with a pencil and a scrap of paper. Mr. Schmidt's words echoing in her mind. Sell a product, not time. What product could she make? The market was flooded with garments from factories. But as she looked at Thomas, she thought of the other mothers in her tenement. The working-class women who wanted their children to look nice but couldn't afford the dresses in the department store windows. The cheap factory clothes were drab and fell apart after a few washes. An idea, small and fragile, began to form. What if she could create a single, simple, beautiful dress for a little girl? A dress made not with the cheapest materials, but with durable, decent quality cotton? A dress that was designed to last, to be passed down? A product built on quality, not just speed. This was a profound shift in mindset. Her goal was no longer to save pennies by being frugal. Her goal was to create value. She paid off her debt to Mr. Gable, a process that took agonizing months of relentless work. The day she made the final payment, she felt a lightness she hadn't experienced in years. The porcelain jar was empty again, but she was free. She took what little money she had left, and instead of buying another tool, she went to a fabric merchant and bought a single bolt of the best cotton she could afford. It was a cheerful blue, dotted with tiny white flowers. She spent a week designing, drafting, and sewing. She poured all her skill, all her love for her own child, into one perfect little dress. It had a reinforced collar, strong seams, and a simple, elegant cut that allowed a child to run and play. She had created her product. Now she had to sell it. She didn't have a shop, so she turned her community into her marketplace. She approached Mrs. Rossi, the grocer's wife, who had a daughter just Thomas's age. Mrs. Rossi, she said, her heart pounding, I have made this dress. I know things are tight. Let your Maria wear it for a week. If you don't love it, if it doesn't hold up to her playing, you owe me nothing. If you do, pay me what you can. It was a gamble, an investment in trust. A week later, Mrs. Rossi came to her, her eyes shining. Eleanor, this dress, it's wonderful. Maria looks like a little lady. And after 3 washes, it still looks new. She paid Eleanor the full price and ordered another for her niece. Maria Rossi became a walking advertisement. Other mothers saw the pretty, durable dress and began to ask where it came from. Slowly, cautiously, orders started to trickle in. Eleanor had found her niche. She named her creation, the Bluebell dress. She was making more money now than she ever had doing piecework. But her initial success brought a new, overwhelming challenge. She was drowning in her own success. She was sewing 16 hours a day, her back a knot of pain, a pile of orders mocking her from the corner. She was still in the wheel, only now it was a wheel of her own making. She was a bottleneck. She couldn't grow because she was still selling her own time. The thought of hiring someone was terrifying. It meant trusting another person with her quality, her reputation. It meant taking on the responsibility of a wage. It was the leap from being self-employed to being a business owner. She thought of the other women in her building, women like her younger self, trapped on the piecework treadmill. She thought of Maria, a young mother whose husband had been injured at the docks. One evening, she knocked on Maria's door. Maria, she began, her voice nervous. I cannot keep up with the orders for the dresses. I know your skill with a needle. I will pay you for each dress you complete. More than you could make on piecework in 2 days. But you must make it exactly as I do. The quality is everything. Maria agreed, her eyes wide with a mixture of hope and disbelief. Eleanor spent a week training her, not as a boss, but as a partner. She shared her patterns, her techniques for reinforcing seams, her obsession with quality. It was an investment in a person, in a system. The first dress Maria completed was perfect. Eleanor now had the output of 2 women. She wasn't just a seamstress anymore. She was managing production. With the increased income, she bought another machine and hired another woman. Then another. Within a year, her small room had become a tiny, bustling workshop, filled with the hum of machines and the chatter of women who were now earning a dignified wage. She moved her small family to a slightly larger apartment on the floor below, giving the entire room over to the business. She became a master of her small enterprise. She learned to buy fabric in bulk, negotiating prices with the same merchants who once saw her as a lowly seamstress. She created 2 more simple, elegant designs. Vance Dresses became a quiet local brand, known not for being the cheapest, but for being the best value. It was a brand built on a mother's understanding of what other mothers needed: quality, durability, and a touch of beauty in a hard world. Years later, Eleanor Vance stood at the window of a proper factory floor, a large, bright space she had leased in the heart of the garment district. Below her, dozens of women worked at rows of sewing machines, not in the frantic, desperate pace of a sweatshop, but with the focused calm of skilled artisans. Her son, Thomas, now a tall, well-spoken young man with a degree in accounting, stood beside her, managing the company's books. They were Vance & Son Apparel. Eleanor was no longer poor. She was wealthy, but her wealth was not just in her bank account. It was in the opportunities she had created. It was in the lives of the women she employed, many of them single mothers themselves, who could now feed their children and send them to school without falling into the traps she had. She had built her fortress, and its walls were made of more than bricks and mortar. They were woven from integrity, value, and the radical idea that a business could be both profitable and humane. Her journey had taught her the most vital lessons of finance and life. That true wealth isn't about saving pennies, but about creating value. That the greatest investment is not in a machine or a stock, but in your own skills and the skills of others. She learned that the mindset of the wealthy isn't about hoarding money, but about building systems that generate money. She had started with nothing but a needle and a mother's desperate love. And from that, she had woven a dynasty. Looking at the thriving business before her, she realized the truth of her life's work. She had not just built a company. She had reversed the formula of her old life. She no longer sold her time for money. Instead, she had used her money, her knowledge, and her time to build a system that gave her, and dozens of other women, the one thing they all craved: freedom. And it was a legacy more beautiful and more enduring than any dress she had ever sewn.